what I'm going to push the threshold towards is we're going to take a look at Cubase 13, things that I believe you should just get into as soon as you load Cubase rather than after. So the very first portion of the screen that is going to be occupied by Cubase is just the hub. I usually do not use any function of the hub. I just load either a template or a recent. So there's an empty here. There's a test I've done today, hello world. And there's a console tape mixing template that has remained from my Cubase 12 tests. Imagine that. So here, I'm not going to use recent. If I start things up, I usually use empty. Okay. So I'm going to use empty and I'm going to go create. It's going to prompt for a location, and we're going to use Cubase projects, intro to Cubase. This is very important. I have a Patreon if you want to join. For a little bit of money every month, you get a ton of videos, tons of content. You get a Discord in which we can chat, and you have tons of discounts because there's a lot of companies that believe in what I do. So the money you pay for the Patreon pays itself back in buying plugins and things you need at a lower price. I know the offers are amazing, but I guarantee you we can oftentimes beat that. So Untitled, and this is completely new and empty. The way it starts usually might be exactly like this. You got maybe the left pane, and then you got your arrange, and then you got your mixer at the bottom, okay? The very first thing I like to do when I am into Cubase is just to set my studio setup. And I would recommend you do this, okay? So we're gonna take a look at it. It's in studio setup, okay? We bring it here, we can make this window bigger. And usually the first thing I'd like to do is go to your audio system. ASIO driver, that's the one I use. There's not a lot of stuff that we want to set, but maybe the precision I like to have in 64, and we will need to restart Cubase or Nuendo to do this. I like the processing precision to be 64-bit float, just because it's more bits, okay? 32-bit float, it's not bad, but we got the opportunity to go to 64, so we go there. Activate multiprocessing, I definitely want. ASIO guard, you can keep it on low, normal, or high. If we're using complicated, heavy setups and sessions, you might want to keep it at least on ASIO guard normal. Now, this introduces a secondary buffer in Cubase, and so for this reason, it just tends to add a little bit more latency, or just to work towards making Cubase more reliable rather than more responsive. I honestly don't quite feel a difference in just real-time responsiveness, so I usually keep it on, but you can keep it off and then go there. The Steinberg audio power scheme, I don't need because I have my own power scheme in Windows, so that's something I don't need. This will make sure that you are not putting hard drives to sleep and you're utilizing the top of your performances, available there. Preload, the adjusting for record latency, I don't actually change, believe it or not. Then we go to the actual device that you're using. And here you can see that my Lynx Aurora USB is listed completely, and it's all of the inputs and all of the outputs. You can rename the channels if you want them to appear with a different name. That's kind of useful. And if it's externally clocked, you should check externally clock. In my case, I'm using an envelope external clock, so it needs to be clocked externally and marked, okay? Now, the MIDI port setup is where tons of things will happen in my specific studio, because here I have really a ton of inputs and outputs that I need to make sure they work, right, to do that. So I don't have a note here, believe it or not, where I write or type down all of my device's MIDI inputs and outputs, but you should do it. And I think I have a TXT somewhere. We're not going to do it. We're going to venture in just troubleshooting or doing things like that. So you see the Windows MIDI device here. It's just Windows MIDI. It's what the drivers are. And if you are on an Apple computer, this is gonna probably say core MIDI, core audio, core whatever. It's just the driver that your operating system uses to interface from the hardware to the actual DAW. So it doesn't quite matter. It's all gonna be, Windows MIDI. Then we got whether it's an input or an output, and it's all ins and outs. And we got the name. We can still rename how we want to see things. And then we have a visible or not, and whether or not we want this device to be considered an all MIDI inputs, okay? Sometimes I don't want to do that. There's just a few synths that I like to keep in all MIDI inputs because it's just the things I have close to me. But just so you know, make sure that if you want to use that function, it's split between the synths you want. So for example, the Aurora Virtual MIDI in is just to update or manage the driver in the Aurora or the firmware or stuff like that. So I don't want it visible. This is not an actual instrument. So the Bass Station 2, we want it visible. We'll keep it in all MIDI inputs. And then we got tons of just the ESI interface having 16 plus 16 variable in-outs. I'm going to keep them all on. Aurora Virtual MIDI output, I also keep inactive, and everything here is done. Used system timestamp for Windows MIDI input. I'm not using. I don't want to use direct music. I don't want to use WinRT MIDI. These are just general drivers Windows has. I don't care. Okay, MIDI remote, track quick links. This is all stuff you want to set later on. We don't care about that right now. System link, if you're using that, it's amazing. I'm not interested at the moment to use that, so I've rarely used it, so we're done. This is all for my studio setup, and probably for yours as well. You might have different ports, different setups, things, stuff like that. Once I'm done with this, I need to make sure that I can monitor what I have in this session, okay? So things are not gonna play, okay? And I'm gonna show you that I even have my Aurora remote control where I have my setups here checked. So my sources are as such. You see 15, 16 is actually the outputs for my monitoring. So my monitoring device, the monitor controller, the dangerous music stuff is all connected to the output 15, 16 because that's the digital out that goes to the DA that then transforms it to analog and lets me hear things through my monitoring and speakers, power amps and speakers, because I have passive speakers. So we need to use 15, 16. And so once you're done here, everyone will think that if you put audio in here, things will work. And I guarantee you it won't, because now that we've set our studio, we need to go to audio connections. When you start your audio connections after you've done the studio price, you will kind of see that there's nothing in here. So this is where we take our studio hardware and we connect it to things that Cubase can use in the session itself. And as you can see, it's completely empty. Everything is completely empty. So we gotta set these up. The first thing I want to do here is go to my control room and enable what Cubase calls control room. Why do I want to have a control room? Because I want to set my monitors here along with headphones if you have any for controllers, and also the stream, okay? So what I want to do is I want to set an output that I'm just going to keep and I'm not going to use, maybe because we need it for the control room. So just bear in mind that sometimes it's necessary to just drive an output 1, 2 that is not connected, okay? And this is kind of the main problem with these many levels. We have a studio setup, which we've just done. We have audio connections, and we have a bus name, but then we have to connect it to the audio device. So the audio device and device port are what the hardware has. The bus name is what Cubase lets us see, okay? That's why it's audio connections. It's audio devices and ports being connected to bus names. And it's called bus, but it's really channels that are going to be used in our virtual mixer. So I go to control room and I go add channel. And what I want to add here from all that I have is a monitor channel. And I'm going to call this monitor easily. It's a stereo version. Look at the many setups we have. We don't need anything but stereo. My 2 speakers, these one I know, are connected to the Aurora 15, 16. So now this is gonna be monitor left, okay? Why did I do the output 1, 2 that is not connected? I could call these no output. So I usually keep a no output here, which as you can see is a main mix, and it goes to no ports. So we'll see afterwards how that works. Once the control room monitor is set, we need to set your stream. This is something I do. This is also good if you have audio movers, if you have any kind of real-time stream with producers, other musicians, things like that. So what I do is I go right click here, and all I need to do is add Q, and I'm gonna call this stream. It's a stereo feed, LR, and I know in my hardware setup, this is 13, 14. Why don't we do it from outputs? Because outputs is not for monitoring tasks. Monitoring tasks like talkback, external inputs, cues, headphones, and monitors are all done in control room if you want to use control room, which I do. If you don't want to use control room because you're using a different software, then you disable control room and you use one of the outputs as a main mix, you send it to wherever you want, and the next thing in line that you want to use will be your monitoring. I don't do that because I'm streaming to you as well. I do a lot of video recording and I send stuff for streaming sometimes to people like students and things. So I need these to be on. Let's take a look at what happened now that we've done stream and monitor. Okay, here on the right pane is going to be a CR tab. This tab CR now has the two things we've created. It's got monitors and it's got stream. You see here at the bottom, this is one thing that is gonna get you a lot. The tabs are twofold, top, bottom. Now, I don't know you, but I've been missing sometimes the fact that at the bottom there are other tabs. This is why I have set these orange, you see this orange outline that goes around the tabs. A lot of the times in previous versions of Cubase, I have disregarded the highlight of this color tone. So we are into CR, but we're now into main. This is the tab that I want to take a look at with you. So here on top, we start off with stream. Here on the top, we have all of the cues that we've been using, but because we only have stream and monitor, we only see one cue, which is our stream. If we right click this window, audio connections, we can put it always on top, which is something I would recommend, because now that I click on the CR and the other tabs, the audio connections is gonna stay here. So it kind of helps, if I want it, I want it, if I close it, I close it, and then I will open it again. So our stream does not need to have cue, it needs to have mix. Why is that? In my specific case, I need stream to be a 100% clone of my main, which is at the bottom. You see that main, okay? So what is main feeding from? Mix. What is stream feeding from? Mix. I'm not using a cue where I'm sending you some sort of different mix. For example, the song minus the bass guitar because the drummer wants to hear how the drums play with guitars, or vocals. They don't want to have maybe the keys. You know how cues work, right? They're made for the musician or somebody else who's tracking something. And they have a different request for what they want to hear and the balance thereof that you have. But in my case, I'm not using cues. I'm just sending you 100% the copy of these. Okay, so here at the bottom, you can see that there's main, mix, and there's a lot of things. There's listen for output, which we want because this is going to be our listen bus as well. We can turn the metronome on. We can use a reference level and set it if you just need to calibrate things. We can dim the volume here. And we have different monitoring for channels and things that I'm not interested right now. We can turn on the levels so we can see what kind of level the click has, if we use talkback, how it has to be, the listening, all these different things, which are really, really useful. The stream works the same way. Now, I'm not using the talkback, so I don't need to enable it, even if it's only for cues, but I usually disable it for you. The channels are A to B. These are left-right standard. I don't need to downmix anything. And the monitors are just monitors. So it's just left-right channels, very simple setup. What matters to me is that I have stream open up here that I always like to have. And then I have main at the bottom. This is our control room in my case. My monitors and your stream. Okay, very simple. This is a volume knob if you want to use it to alter whatever your volume. I don't use that. I keep that at 0 and use my hardware for it. Now, what I need to do is I need to go to the inserts right now. So that's right. The control room allows you to instantiate plugins as inserts. So what I need to do is two things. I want my stream to be not too loud because I tend sometimes to run loud stuff and I don't want it to clip. So I usually run a -6 on the left and right channels. And you see I've just dialed a simple mixer delay. So default plugin. If you're used to Pro Tools, this is trim. Okay, very simple. You can use any plugin. This is the simplest. It's -6 levels, no delays, no phase inversion, nothing. This is all I need to do for stream. The other thing I need to do is I need to set my inserts for the room correction that I have. So here I use reverberate. And what I need to do is I need to go to my preset bank and I need to load my correction V10B. This is what I use for correcting my speakers. And this is how it has to be. I don't need to see this preset, the metering I don't need. I use these to correct my room. So the speakers sound different because my main is affecting the monitoring feed through these impulse response. And I use it in 0 latency, which uses more CPU, but avoids adding latency because I want to play my stuff while I am also correcting my room. So now I can save this and call it intro to Cubase. And we have my room correction for my mains. It's on my mains. It's not on the mix. It's not on the stream. It's only on my monitoring. So it's never going to get printed. It's super safe. It's out of the way. It's not related to any of the mixes I'm going to work with in the next year or so. It's always going to be about monitoring. That's why I like and use control room. Okay. But if you have a tree knob or if you have a Dirac, whatever, you can use those. If you have hardware for correction, you don't want to use control room. Maybe you want to just output there. So, that's good news because I can surface back here and we can take a look at the next thing. So my control room's done. Definitely something you need to do. Now I have pedals and I have synthesizers. And if my pedals and synthesizers are not connected together, which I know most of you are here just for this specific reason, I am not gonna use Cubase. It's not a DAW I can use. What we need to do here is we need to set external instruments and we need to set external effects. Okay, what are these? External instruments are my synthesizers. External effects are my effects. These are the pedals or the hardware that you have and pedals. Mostly for me, this is pedals actually. And instruments are the synthesizers. We're gonna use the Bass Station 2 as an example and everything's gonna pretty much follow. We need to add an external instrument because my bass line here is in fact an external instrument. So we go add and we call this Bass Station 2 because that's the name. You can use anything you want. Now the Bass Station 2 coincidentally is not stereo, is mono. That's it. So we give it one mono return, 0 stereo returns. I am not gonna associate a MIDI device because once you go here, you don't have MIDI devices associated, okay? So you can create one or add one that you've already added. But I'm gonna go okay. And right now, all we need to do is take a look at Bass Station 2. It's got one return. It's got a mono output. It's not connected. Now, this is where we tell our computer that audio device and device port 6, my Bass Station here goes to my Culture Vulture channel 2. It comes back out of the Culture Vulture into input 6 of the Aurora, and this is exactly why I've used record 6. Is there a delay that this instrument has? We could calculate that. I won't do it right now, but I kind of know that. Do I have a return gain here? No, it's okay. I want to keep it at 0. I don't need to change the gain here. And do we have a MIDI device that is connected to it? Yes. So this, what I have done here, shall not make your bass station work, because we've created an external instrument. We've told Cubase what audio device and port are to be connected to the return bus 1, but it's not telling what kind of MIDI device is there. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we go to MIDI device and we create a new device. Now I know you can see Bass Station 2. I'm gonna select Bass Station 2, but I'm gonna show you the Open MIDI Device Manager. We right click on this window and we give it always on top as well, because the two windows, the external instrument and the MIDI Device Manager, are strictly connected because these MIDI devices have audio returns and MIDI channels as well. Does it make sense? I hope it does. Okay, so the Bass Station 2 is done. You see it here. I can actually open the device, take a look at the channels and things it has. The important stuff is that my Bass Station 2 is connected to Bass Station 2. You see, finally, here we're connecting a device that we've created called Bass Station 2 to a device that is a MIDI port. So the problem here in this specific instance is that you're reading a little bit too much of the same name. Bass Station 2, Bass Station 2, Bass Station 2. But these are three different things. The device is one thing. It's the bus name. That's a device that I've created in the MIDI. And then third is which kind of MIDI port I'm using. Coincidentally, they're all called Bass Station 2. But one is a MIDI port via USB. One is a device, and one is a bus for an external instrument. I'm going to close these for a second. So now we're going to create the bass station, the track. So we right click in this area, which I think even if you've never used Cubase, you know that this is kind of where the tracks are at. I'm going to go right click, add instrument, and I'm going to choose an instrument. What instrument do we want to use? And here, let me move it up a little bit. We're going to see all of the virtual instruments that I have. Where is our bass station? It's in external plugins. What MIDI inputs do we want to use? And I'm going to use all MIDI inputs, although we could say Bass Station 2. This means that we can trigger this instrument from any MIDI input. What output do we want to have? You see here, there's no output. And no output left-right is what I call the no output port. Okay, so we'll need to probably change the name of these because it's completely misleading. The event part is MIDI, that's okay. And the name, I'm not gonna name it because it's gonna inherit the instrument name. How many of them? 1. And now here we have our Bass Station 2, 1, because it's just numerically incremental for Cubase. The Bass Station 2 does not have a nice, GUI like, like a virtual instrument per se, because there's no virtual instrument. It's just delay and return gain. So the delay is set to what we had here in audio connections, external instrument, it's 0. And the return gain is 0 as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and play this and check if we've got our routing down, okay? So I'm gonna click on the routing here and you see no output, right? Now, this is because in audio connection, I made this guy no output, okay? So maybe we should call this something else. Default out, Now, this is default out. So this instrument goes to default out, and default out is actually our monitoring. Let me put it on record so that the MIDI data is passed through. We can hear the bass station in all of its evil glory. It works. We put one keyboard in as an example. We should put one effect in. So how about a pedal? We go to external effects, because it's an external effect, and we go add external effect. Now this is kind of similar to the instruments, but it's not the same. So I'm going to call this volante. For example, we're going to make that pedal. And we have to tell Cubase what kind of configuration the pedal has, you know? So it's got a stereo in and a stereo out. Okay, so I'm going to say stereo, stereo, and I am not going to associate a MIDI device because it's got no MIDI device. It's not something I can play, okay? I could use program changes via MIDI. I'm not using it, so that's okay. There's no link. Okay, now we have the volante. We have the send bus stereo prepared for us with the return. It's just not connected. Okay, so here comes my knowledge, your knowledge. You gotta know how your studio is set up. I know that my device port is 5 for the output and 6 for the output. So I am sending to the volante from 5 and 6 of my Aurora card. Okay, so this is how my audio goes to the pedal. In a lot of people's cases, you're gonna have a return bus that is gonna go 2, 5, and 6. Probably the same numbers, only inputs, right? In my case, I don't come back from one pair per pedal. I am not gonna use any return bus. I'm just gonna keep it not connected, okay? I'm gonna keep the delay at 0, the send gain at 0, return gain at 0 for now, okay? And we're gonna create another external effects. And I'm gonna tell you why. We go out external, we call this 2-bus return. It's a send configuration for stereo, and it's a return for stereo. And again, it's got no MIDI device. I'm gonna go OK. And this is in fact actually the return of my pedals, plural. All of my pedals go into a summing box, a dangerous 2-bus, that then funnels my effects into one single stereo pair. So, like a mirror, the 2-bus return does not have sense, it's got just a return, which is input 15 and 16. Now, some people might say, well, wait, you used 15 and 16 for the control room. How can it be? We used output 15 and 16, which is USB play. In the case of Link's Aurora nomenclature, it's play is output and record is input. So now we're using input 15 and 16, which we haven't used. Don't worry about using stuff that is in use accidentally, because Cubase is going to tell you if stuff is already connected, as you can see here. So now what we've done is I've set the volante up as an external effect. I've told Cubase that I'm going out to the pedal with 5 and 6, but I'm coming back from the pedals, plural, including the volante, in my 2-bus return. Okay? So the 2-bus return here that I use is set at -6 volume. Okay? So what we could do here, because I'm pushing gain in a bit more than I want it to come out, so I'm using the gain to set it at 12 o'clock, which is -6. So what we could do here to keep unity gain with the signals we're sending through, yet retaining the analog sort of like pushing of the summing box, would be to put 6 here. Double click on it, type 6, enter. So this is going to add 6 dBs of pure digital gain after the fact that we've captured the take through the input. Okay, the signal's coming through, whatever's happening, and then we give it +6. This will compensate the -6 that I have on my summing box. For now, let's not make our lives too complicated. Let's stay at 0, okay? We close this, and now we can create our effects. So I'm gonna go right-click, add effect track, and we choose our effect, which is gonna be external effect. If you don't wanna type, maybe you can type here volante, boom, and volante comes here. Now, what kind of output do we want to have? For now, I'm going to use default out. Do we want to create it inside a folder? Yes, because the effects are nice into a folder, so thank you for allowing me to do it. If you want to do outside, go outside a folder. But I'm going to go inside. We want to open one, create. And now you see the Volante is here. So our Volante has delay 0, send gain 0, return gain 0. Don't freak out for what you're seeing here. Remember, audio connections, Volante, delay 0, send 0, return 0. These are just quick access sliders, okay? These here compared to the other one. Now, if I play and add a send to the base station, we're not going to hear it because we're going to send to the Volante, but we're not returning to anything. So I need to create a second effect. I'm going to go add effect track, and I'm going to look for 2-bus return. I want it stereo, I want a default out, I want it into a folder, and I don't want to use any name. Thank you very much. Now we've got our 2-bus return. These 2 tracks are available in the session as hardware effects. Now the 2-bus doesn't have a sound, it's just a return for us, right? But the Volante is an effective send. So for this reason, we go base station 2, we go to the mixer, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, and you see here sends, the sends part. Now the violet here, base station is the instrument we're using. I'm gonna put Volante, effects 1, I could call these just Volante, and these just 2-bus return. I think it's easier. And here comes my send. And I'm going to put it at minus infinite. Then I'm going to turn it on. And I'm going to put it at around maybe minus 10. Okay. Now I'm going to play the base station. And hopefully we're going to hear the Volante pedal as well. And in fact, I think you can hear it. I moved the timing on the Volante and stuff, whatever preset that is, it's working, right? We can hear it. It's reacting to what I'm doing. We've got our instrument, we got our effects, just the main reason why I need a DAW to be completely locked in. Speaking of locked in, who mentioned whether or not these things are syncing to tempo? Normally, it won't. Cubase is going to have a tempo. Your base station 2, if you have one, is going to have its tempo. It's got a tempo knob that you can move. And the Volante has a tempo knob that you can move. At least for me, it doesn't make sense to have 3 devices on different tempos if the song they're playing for is one tempo, right? And if it changes, they all need to change together. So how do you sync the clock of a session of something in Cubase to make sure your hardware synthesizers and your effect pedals are all in sync all the time, especially if you change a song and you don't need to go and adjust things or forget? You go to Transport, Project Synchronization Setup. So this is where you synchronize, this is where you set up the synchronization for your project. It's very easy. It's called Project Synchronization Setup. So if you have a source that is external and uses either internal MIDI, ASIO audio device type, or VST system link sources, this is where you set it up. I don't use external sources. In my case, it's the DAW that sets the tempo for the devices. All of them need to be synced in. Okay? So we don't use sources. I don't have a source. It's going to be Cubase, but I have destinations for sure. So here, this window, as far as I remember, cannot be extended. So we got to leave with what we have. We have a list of MIDI clock destinations, a list of parameters for clock preferences, and a list of destinations for MIDI timecode. If your devices are using MIDI clock or MIDI timecode or both, or they're compatible with either, that's where you set it. Okay. Look what I've done here. The clock destination is base station 2 dash base station 2. Why is there two names named Base Station 2? Because our audio connection setup for the external instrument has a MIDI device, Base Station 2, attributed to the external instrument, Base Station 2. That's how it is, right? Here you will put every output that you want the clock to be followed from. So who has to sync to Cubase? Now, very simply for now, I've done Base Station, and at the bottom here, I've done MIDI out 16, because the output 16 of my MIDI interface, the ESI M8X, goes to my timeline pedal, which then throughs to the big sky, which then throughs to the volante, and stops, because the avalanche run and the black hole don't have a MIDI setting. But the three Strymons are all in line, going MIDI through one to the other. My timeline gets the MIDI clock, passes it through the cloud, the big sky, and passes it to the volante pedal. And it all happens conveniently from one MIDI output, which is MIDI out 16. There's a couple of things I want to do here. I always want to send start messages. Usually that's how I work. But with the bass line, and if you have Electron devices, same deal. For my devices, I don't want to send a continue message. So if you want to use continue messages to drop things where they were, you can go start. But I don't build grooves that stay there live all the time. I kind of bounce them. So I want to make sure I have a complete restart instead of a continue. So that's just me. The last parameter here is send MIDI clock in stop mode is, to me, very important, because what happens usually is that when you press play on your DAW, MIDI clock gets sent. And there's sometimes the need for a bar or two of pre-roll to let the clocks sink in, and then you record or then you play. You gotta give it a little bit for the clock to sink in. Now, if you use send MIDI clock in stop mode, Cubase will keep sending the clock to the devices. Even now that I'm talking, I'm not pushing play. That is what is going to happen. Now, the MIDI timecode can follow the project time. If you need timecode to follow the song time, project time, do that. I don't need that, so I'm okay. I don't use machine control, so I don't have MMC in master or slaves. But if you do, Cubase got you covered. It's here. And this is by far the most comprehensive setup for project syncing I've seen. So this is it, and this is why now I have 120, and my tempo on the bass line cannot move. We could do an exercise. I could take these and go 240, or maybe, yeah, let's do 240. The timeline is the gray one and the volante is the golden one. They have an LED on top that's blinking green, and they're blinking at 240 BPM. If I go 60, you see now they're blinking a lot slower. That's, to me, extremely important. I want to have the clock being sent there. So now we've done the instruments, the effects, and the MIDI syncing in it. What is there for me, except for like continuing to build the setup, what is there to say about a first run in Cubase? There's a couple more things that I would always advise you to do. Go to Edit and go to Preferences. What we want to do is go down here to VST, Plugins, and if you want your plugins to selectively suspend, you should check Suspend VST3 plugin processing when no audio signals are received. It will suspend the VST3 load when plugins are not receiving audio. The downside of this is that it might create some jumps sometimes. So some people like a system that is reliable and is always at maximum load. If it can't take it, it can't take it. They will work their session some other way. Now, lo and behold, user interface color schemes. The first thing I would do here is set your focus color, the custom color scheme if you want, the area background, the cycled region, the grid lines, everything. Now, this is not how I have Nuendo set up, but it's kind of close. And as I said, I have a specific need for having focus color visible. Even if obnoxious, I need to know where I'm focusing. And I'm going to show you right away. If we go OK and we click here, you see the panes that I'm in. And that's the orange part. Make it a color that stands out and doesn't completely make your neighbors call the police. It's okay, just as long as you can see where you are. I guarantee you that's quite important, especially in other situations in which you have small tabs at the bottom here, like main inserts. You see how easy it is to see where things are, attributed to, probably. So that's one thing that I would do. Color schemes for sure. Then you go to track type default colors. To me, extremely important. I want my effects to be always cyan, my instrument kind of violet, magenta, whatever, sampler, MIDI, drum, adder, I put in gray because they are tracks that I will color myself need be, or that I want to feel neutral somehow. Don't tell me why, that's how I do it. Audio here, I've put on orange. I mean, we could put it somewhere here, but remember that's a default. So that's what color you want your default track to have. It could be super white, could be light blue, could be whatever. Other very important track is group. And to me, groups are always green or dark green, being a bright green for the mix bus. For those of you who follow me, I use tons of groups. I like the dark green going into the brighter green for groups, so default, green. And VCA for some reason is not doing what it should, so we're gonna set it together. Should be yellow. That's what it is. So now we're gonna save this in your own preferences. If you just wanna save this stuff you've done, you go to save marked preferences only, and you check the things you want to save in this profile or preset. For example, the whole user interface part, but nothing else. And you call these, Alberto November 24 colors, for example. That would be it. If you want to save everything, you can do it like that. So as you can see, I have Alberto RS November 24. So we're going to do the same thing. How do you override that? Well, you go save, and you got to have a good memory and remember that it's like this. So now magically, this preset is taken. Do you want to override it? Yes. So now we have it here. And we can continue and keep overriding on it without losing what we've done. Because we go to the faders. So again, is it useless? To me, no. So these are the actual faders. You see the little one? There's a purple here, there's grays, there's a white one. These are the fader colors, like the actual plastic piece you would snap on the moving metal bracket. Right? So for groups, I want green, VCAs, I want yellow, and then instrument return, I want some kind of magenta, and then instrument, I want purple. Effect, sampler, input, audio. Honestly, I don't want these to be different. Some people might want these to be different. I don't use them colored because they are colored through the track itself. You see here, right? Purple for bass station 2, volante, and two bus return, there's cyan. I don't need that different stuff. Then we go to mix console section. Mix console section is F3 here. So we go again here to preferences, and then we take the user interface mix console sections. These are all the sections here. What kind of colors you want these sections to have? The routing, the sands. Honestly, I don't change these. I like the orange for the sands. I like this kind of blue for the inserts. They speak to me like inserts and sands in Cubase and Nuendo, always been like that, so doesn't matter. But if you want colors here to be different, less distracting, you can do that for sure. You can even put your inserts to be gray, for example, and here you see there's pre and post fader. It's really well done. The hardware, for example, could have a different color, so that hardware stuff, speaks to you differently than something that is not hardware, for sure. The channel strip colors for EQ, tools, gate, compressors, limiters, I usually don't want them colored, so I put them in gray. And then the channel colors, this is very important. I want tracks, folder tracks, mix console channels, and colors to be shown for the selected channels with this much color strength, which I would say it's like maybe 25%. This will color all of your tracks. So in theory, you would have something like this. And I honestly despise this because I cannot look at just the top or bottom part of the mixer to identify the type of track I have. I need a color to be there. Maybe not super bright, but kind of there. See, you can make it brighter. You can go obnoxiously for the channels, for tracks in mix console, or the mix console channels themselves. It's stuff like this that will get your DAW to feel like home. I guarantee you that. Once the engine works, it's about feels. And, you know, that's how I've been working for the past years or so. Metering is the next thing I would do. Look what I have here. I like my meters to have more than the usual zones, just because of how I work with audio and what I need to do, the formats, the loudness, the tracks. I like to have these. 48 to 24, I have these kind of middle dark cyan color. I have a darker version that goes from 48 to minus infinite, then it gets lighter, and then I have a very tiny area of minus 14 to minus 12, which is green. And then I have this kind of golden part that is minus 12 to minus 6, just because it's different. And then I have magenta for minus 6 to minus 0.2, and then once I reach minus 0.2, I'll see red. Because these faders in the channels have a plus 3, you see a lot of red, which is nice because your meter doesn't go to 0, it goes to plus 3 digital, obviously, which yes, you can describe plus 3 digital because you have the beats, but it will not translate obviously to a digital to audio converter. The other thing is you can customize everything here. Digital, DIN, EBU, the British, Nordic, K2014. You can take your time and just completely change the colors. I've done it only for my channel mixer, which is what the mixer here has. That's to me the most important. I need to have a clear reference to what is in the loud, what is in the ballpark. Being a minus 14 or 12, the ballpark. That's how I see if tracks are working when I'm mixing a record, like a real song. The minus 12 area in digital to me is very important because it kind of works about the nearness of a kind of a 0 VU, and then I push it up or down, and this helps me gain stage. Think about that. I don't know why or how, that's how I behave and work. So that's it. If you want to change the ballistics, they're here. So absolutely. I like the fallback of 12, but you can increase it, and so the fallback will be more dBs per second, so it will be more responsive or less. One thing that I would recommend you do all the time is when you are using Cubase or any DAW and you default to muscle memory to a shortcut that is not working, you should immediately address such shortcut. Either you have no muscle memory and you want to build it on the DAW, that's okay, you just go remember what is being used, or you set it up. Now, some shortcuts I want to have all the time the same. For example, zooming in and out of the timeline to me is always control minus or plus. So if I do it here, as you notice, it's not working. So how do we do it? Oh, that's easy. We go to edit, key commands, and we edit this. We try and find where the zoom is and we edit it here. Now, there should be a shortcut for opening key commands as well. Let me see if they put it in. Key commands. So the first shortcut that I want you to set is the shortcut to get to the shortcuts. Believe it or not, that's how it should be. And I will do something intense like Control-Alt-Shift-K. It seems to be not in conflict with anything else. So this one, I want to be Control-Shift-K. You see, each time you want to set a shortcut, we go Control-Alt-Shift-K and the key commands open up. This is good. So now we need to find the zoom in and zoom out. So we try and go zoom in. So we got zoom in vertically, zoom out vertically. We got other things. Let's see if we find zoom in or zoom out. So we got H or G, which are the Nuendo shortcuts as well. Let's try them. G works. H works. You see how I'm zooming in the timeline, right? I don't like this. I'm not used to using G and H. So we go Control-Alt-Shift-K. We go zoom in, in, it's H, we erase it, and we go Control plus or equals and minus. And then we go zoom out, and it's G, we remove it, yes, and we go Control minus. So now my shortcuts are set. Each time something doesn't align with your muscle memory for something you've learned, think about whether or not you want to adapt to the DAW or you want your DAW to adapt to you. Personally, because I work here by myself, I want my shortcuts to be mine, and I just cannot fathom using anything but Control minus or equals for zooming in and out. Maybe that's just me, that's who I am. Other things include cutting or setting loops. For example, this loop region here, I want the key L to instantiate the loop or disable it, enable or disable that. Let's just hover the mouse here. Activate cycle. So loop is not actually what we had, okay? Or cycle. Preview cycle, cycle. Here it is. So we saw it. We erase this and we go L. Now there's no conflict because we removed the previous one. And now we have just the L to go here. Now there's another thing that I constantly use in MIDI. It's retrospective recording. I don't know if any of you were thinking about it. That's another one. If you go to any instrument and go to inspector, you'll see here that there's actually insert recordings, and then there's insert as linear recording or empty retrospective record buffer. Okay, so you have a track, you play something, you haven't recorded it, Cubase actually has, so you can recall that through retrospective recording. But the shortcut's not always super easy to do, so what I will do is I'll look for retrospective, and here it is, MIDI retrospective keyboard. Let me see if I can expand these. Insert from all MIDI inputs. So shift numerical star to me doesn't work because I don't have a numerical star on my keyboard. So what I'm going to do is I could do Control F9 or Shift F10. I'm going to do Control F9 just so that I keep it on the actual record, but it's not Shift, it's Control. And that one works for me. So I could play something. Let me lower these around. Let me see if that works. So we go Shift and F9 to record. And then we do, see, we have it. Then I go just play. Then I do random notes. And then I go Control F9. And as you noticed, I tracked something anyway. And here are the weird notes that I have inputted because I've just activated or triggered the actual insert as linear recording. You can insert it as a cycle when you have cycle recording, or you can empty the retrospective record buffer, which will empty the buffer. So this one is something I never do, and I would want to make sure that there's no shortcut for it that I can see here activate by accident. Little by little, while you're working on your stuff, you'll go and say, you know what? I wish I had a key for hiding all of the plugins that I've opened. I wish I had a key for maybe turning on the automation for this channel, or stuff like that. If you have to go edit key commands, it will be a little bit too slow. Sometimes you'll go, oh, I'll do it later. Doesn't matter. No, just open these with a shortcut, go there. The other stuff in here really is so comprehensive and so personal that to me, it's not 100% what I would recommend you do on just your first run. But I guarantee you the things I've told you are, I just need these to be different. I cannot start a Cubase session or Nuendo session with things being default. The rest